Not sure what I want to talk about. Believe me, there's a lot to talk about. I guess I give my thoughts on Den Keeper's community post. I basically want to comment on what he nicknamed the suggested model of modern decay. He said, I guess you can say I'm trying to figure out where I went wrong. And we all know the educational system, especially in the West, is designed to is a setup for failure on a spiritual level. Like, it has all these promises on a material level, but it'll never deliver on a spiritual level, because you can't talk about God in school, you can't talk about spirituality in school. And I've been thinking about this for a while. And to me, it's very obvious that K through 12 is set up to demoralize children, especially boys. And I left a comment on the community post outlining my thoughts on what I think about the educational system. And anybody who runs in these circles, you already know. I even did a video about it. Can't remember the exact title. It had something to do with I basically posed the question, where do we get our inner knowing? Despite the fact that the material physical world seems to be against us in every facet of life from the moment we're born. And to me, that's the Adam and Eve story mythos playing out in real life, in real time, with all individuals. Any individual who came out of their mother, which is everybody, right? I don't know what those implications are for artificial wombs or anything like that. It's an interesting question, and one that I can't answer because I don't know anything about it. I'm not gonna really comment on it, other than it'll be interesting when that comes about, the artificial womb thing. But in my community post, I talked about how K through 12 is all about demoralization, snuffing out our inner knowing in order to make loyal workers rather than free thinkers. I'm just going to read my community post. I say it's worse off for boys because it's more crucial for them during those years. And when I say that, I mean, age 5 through 16, 17, 18. They, quote unquote, strap boys to a desk for 7+ hours a day, 5 days a week, and expect them to be still and listen to some hag who hates her job and especially hates boys. That goes for men too. These types of people tend to hate masculinity in general. That's why the world is so anti-masculine right now, because we've had multiple generations now of women teaching in classrooms, and it's at least very obvious to me that they hate boys, they hate men, they hate anything masculine. They hate the fact that boys stand up to pee. It's that bad. Reading on, the moment the child begins protesting, they'll slap labels like ADHD or autism to them. The sooner they get them addicted to substances, the better. And that's part of the blinding part of demoralization. Keep you on drugs, keep you on substances. That way, when you're an adult and you're trying to get away from these medications, you'll grow addicted to something else, whether it be heroin or cocaine or whatever. Alcohol is a big one. Tobacco. All the I'm gonna link the video in the description. Michelle Gibson had a very interesting video about addictions and how it was all a setup from the beginning to keep us deaf, dumb, and blind via entertainment, addictions, TV shows, alcohol, drugs, tobacco, video games, movies, things like that. It's a really, really good video. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Continue reading. The dumb parents have no common sense because they went through the same education system too, so they go along with it. It circles back to the epidemic of single motherhood and so on and so forth. It's one big setup to weaken men on a whole. get girls accustomed to the crooked system so that they'll be just as lost as the men when they're older. That's why I said it's the Adam and Eve story. The serpent, Lucifer, Satan, the system, the notnilc, they're always going to target the women first because they know that women can influence men with sex and promiscuity. That's why it's out of control on TikTok and Instagram. All the girls showing off their bodies because that's what men are weak to. They know it. They know they can control men with their bodies. So it's very obvious to me that the system is going to use women in that way. And the younger the better, to be honest. I mean, I know that sounds sick, but that's just the way the world is working right now. If you have a daughter, you're either you may or may not be in for a hell of a ride. I said before that it's been going on since the 70s, but I've been rethinking that. I was watching that old black and white sitcom, Dennis the Menace, and it hit me that Dennis is a young baby boomer. In the show, he lashes out because his father is weak and his mother has no patience. She constantly snaps at him and tells him to entertain himself instead of talking out issues. While this is a TV show meant to entertain, it really puts a spotlight on how the boomers' parents were and how they screwed them up too. These are the types of examples people had for parents watching other parents on TV, and it's a reflection of the mindset and times. They had no patience with their children, and that spirit gets passed on from generation to generation, getting worse each time. Ever watch Happy Days? Those young people are the parents of the boomer gen. Their parents were just as bad. That 70s show is the boomer gen as young adults, same degeneracy. Flash forward to our generation and look how bad it's getting. Gen Z are more zombified than ever. I talk about these generations a lot because I feel it's very insightful. You can track the mindset of whole generations slowly see the decay over a 100-year period. It's crazy. And just to talk about it a bit, we'll get going. Talk while I drive. I got my premise. The basic premise of what I'm about to talk about is, and I didn't know I was going to go here. I'm going to touch on something, this idea of taking God out of the schools. It's going to seem unrelated at first, but hopefully it circles back. And it hit me one day, maybe about 3 weeks ago, that it wasn't about taking God out of the school. And a lot of Christians think that, a lot of people think that, and that's part of the big trick, is to have everyone thinking that the system was attempting to take God out of the school. And that wasn't the case at all. It was, the trick was to get people to stop talking about the ultimate deceiver, Lucifer, Satan, notnilc. Because once you take God out of the school, you don't have the opposite end to talk about either. So it wasn't that they took God out of the school, they took Satan out of the school so that no one will talk about him. So we can't point to the deceiver, the ultimate deceiver. They quote unquote don't want that discussion going on in children's classrooms on any level, because you need to stay asleep, you need to stay deceived. The last thing they want is teachers telling kids that the ultimate influencer, the ultimate deceiver is Satan. And like I said, you take God out of the school and you remove the discussion of Satan, the notnilc, the system, the corrupt system. Something that points back to the sick reality, or whatever is influencing the reality, rather. Because I said it before in my Black Mirror presentation, I don't think the reality is evil. I think it's in a relationship with us. It needs us to generate reality, to generate it. And I don't think that part is evil. If anything, it seems to me that it's feminine in nature. It probably don't make sense, but maybe I'll elaborate on that sometime. I don't have my thoughts completely straight on that. But to get back to the topic, I just wanted to get that premise out of the way as well. Taking God out of the school, you take Lucifer out of the school, and you're free to indulge in whatever degeneracy you want at that point. You can teach transgenderism. You can tell kids it's okay to cut off their body parts, and all of that stuff. because you have absolute reign on children's minds once you take God out of the school. Once you remove Lucifer as well. And to get back what I was saying about the baby boomers, very interesting generation, let me tell you. And I watched one episode of Dennis the Menace, and maybe I'll watch more. It's entertaining. I mean, that child actor is a very good actor. So much so that I looked him up. And I can tell you about him real quick. And of course, without fail, raised by a single mom, father wasn't in the picture, so that opened up all the doors for him to be abused. He was abused by his aunt. His aunt got him into the business. I forget his name. I'll put a Wikipedia link or something later. His aunt got him into the acting Hollywood game, and you know how that goes with Hollywood and children. They're bound to get abused in some way. So now he's a bitter adult, you know, he whistleblower. He goes around talking about what happened to him, and you know, it's awful what happens to these kids. But he's a grown man now. He's a boomer, so he's in his 60s. And it's like watching the episode. I only saw one episode, right? And all of the adults around Dennis, and Dennis, I think he's like 7 or 8. Him and his friend Joey, which is a little silent kid. And I guess the child actor wasn't a very good actor, so from what I'm guessing, they told him to just be quiet. So he's just like a silent type, you know, little Joey. They're going around, and from what I could tell, they weren't really causing mischief. They were just being kids who don't really have a lot of direction, who haven't been told how to act with adults. And the parents try, right? And like I said in the community post that Den Keeper did, the mother tries in her best way. The father's in the picture, but from what I could tell, Dennis's father is working all the time, and they want to spend, like, the father and mother want to spend time together, and don't really have a lot of patience for Dennis. They just kind of tell him to go play outside, you know, that old business. Like, I don't have time for you. They don't say that outright. They may as well. I don't have time with you. Go play outside. That's pretty much the whole premise of the show. Like, Dennis goes out, gets into trouble, you know, tries to help the other character, an adult named Mr. Wilson, who's like an older dude, maybe in his 40s, his 50s, but he don't have patience for him either. So from Dennis's point of view, none of the adults in his life are patient. And to me, that's a spotlight on what the baby boomers went through, and I have a little sympathy for them now, because I know plenty of parents who don't have patience for their children, and I'm not all innocent either. I've had my moments where I lose my patience. I think every parent does. It's especially if you've been raised that way. That's just the way it tends to go. But these old TV shows are fascinating to me now. And I don't know if there are any shows about how the boomers' parents, like the generation before that, how they may have grown up. I started watching a little bit of Andy Griffith, I think it's how you say it. And kind of almost the same deal. The 10-minute clip I watched with Andy and Opie being the little boy, and Andy being the single father, actually. He's a single father in his 30s. He's the sheriff in town. You know, the town of Mayberry. You ever see that? It's a pretty good show. But he really doesn't have... He's a good father, but it seems to me he doesn't have a whole lot of patience either. It's like... And the clip I watched regarding Andy and Opie's trying to tell Andy about the flowers he got for his teacher, because his teacher got upset with him. So Opie's like, well, let me buy her some flowers. Girls like flowers. You know, very innocent. The purest you can get. And he's trying to tell him the story, and Andy's not really showing a whole... I mean, he's being patient, but he's not showing a whole lot of... he's not paying attention. Because it turns out that Opie got the flowers from some moonshiners. It was a group of old ladies who were making bootleg alcohol in their greenhouse. And it's pretty funny. The women play dumb. They're like in their 50s, so they're all, oh no, we're selling alcohol to people who want to celebrate the holidays, and they sell some flowers to Opie, and turns out Opie goes where he's not supposed to go, which is inside the greenhouse. He gets the flowers. He takes a vase or a vase full of that has alcohol in it with the flowers in it. So shows his dad, goes into the sheriff's office, shows his dad, and is like, I don't remember the reason, but he's like, go find another vase. They leave the vase on the table, and they figure out who's the moonshiner in the town. So they go and destroy their little moonshine machine, whatever they're called, their distillery. And I stopped watching them. That was it. But again, with these shows, it gives you a little glimpse into maybe where it went wrong, right? Because I understand they're just TV shows. Like, I get that. But these TV shows are a reflection of the public consciousness, the creators, what they thought about family structure. The nuclear family, right? And to me, the nuclear family was going downhill at that time. The way the boomers were raised, their parents, how they showed them impatience. So it makes sense. And the boomers are the biggest generation, right? And I just want you to think about multiplying that level of, I'm just going to say, spiritual destruction. Because having parents that aren't patient with you is probably the worst. To me, the worst of the worst. And I know there's kids out there that are going through worse times. And I don't mean it like... It's a disaster. Let me just say, it's a disaster on a spiritual level. When you have a whole generation of parents raising... Because the boomer generation raised millennials, and they raised... Gen Xers, maybe some Ys in there, a little, the later you have kids, obviously, if you're having kids in your 50s still, you're going to end up with some Gen Ys and Zoomers that are raised by boomers. And even then, because let's say you're a Gen X or a millennial, and you're boomer parents, and you have children, for instance, you have a child, and the grandparents are in the picture, and those are the baby boomers. So they're still influencing, they're still showing the spiritual impatience and the physical impatience to their grandchildren, and either that or spoiling them, which is just as destruction, because a lot of boomer grandparents and great-grandparents see it as a second chance because they realize they fucked up. They'll never admit it, by the way. They will not admit it. Boomers are just something special, and it's just human nature. And I know it seems like I'm picking on the boomers, but... And they're like I said, I have sympathy for them now because I see what they went through just from watching one episode of Dennis the Menace. It's like little Dennis is just being a boy, right? Just being the way boys are, getting into mischief, trying to help his neighbors the best way he can. Him and little Joey, and it's pretty funny. Like if you have YouTube Premium, you can. Sounds like I'm shilling it now. But if you have YouTube Premium, you can watch Dennis the Menace for free. I suggest you at least watch one episode or two, and you'll get an idea. You'll see the same pattern, the same Adam and Eve mythos play out. And I know it sounds strange, but like I said, it's the mother and father that raise the children, but it's the father who isn't taking charge and isn't taking the lead, letting the mother decide how to run the household. And to me, it's been a disaster ever since. And that's just the way that generation was raised. And I don't know what happened to the generation before, but I have to assume what blows my mind is that's the generation who, like the baby boomers' parents, are the gen who grew up during the Great Depression. So, I mean, I understand psychologically what it may be like to go through something like that, where you want to make sure that your children and grandchildren are taken care of, right? But what happened before that? Like, those two old ladies, running the distillery and the Andy Griffith Show, like they were born before 1900, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Or maybe not, right? But you get my point. Like those are old ass people. Like if they were still alive, they'd be well over 100. And it's these old shows are just mind blowing. Like that 70s show is a good example. That's a little more modern. That was done in the 90s. But those are baby boomers as teenagers. And then you have I'm about to wrap it up, guys, but I want to talk about really quick Happy Days. And those are the parents of the baby boomers when they were teenagers. And if you ever watch Happy Days, you know there was plenty of degeneracy going on. And how far back does it go? It just goes back and back and back. You can trace it all the way back to Adam and Eve. I've said it before. And it's just, it's very, very obvious to me. It's very telling. And when I explain it to people, they look like I have 3 heads. I may as well be speaking in tongues. And like Kirk said, Metaphysical Truth in Games, Kirk, that dude, cool guy. Like he said, it's just, we want to be understood. I want to be understood because I think it's deep. I think it's really deep. I'd be the first to admit if it wasn't deep. Anyway, guys, I think that's all I have to say. Y'all have a great morning. Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.